So ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to go over the one call script? The script that's going to take someone from an unknowing prospect, uneducated about you and your services, and by the end have them fumbling for their wallet to pull out their card to pay that agency flow invoice that you've just sent them. Are you guys ready? Good. So let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, today is going to be a very it's going to be a very sort of, I don't want to say monotonous, but it's going to be a very sort of like slide heavy presentation. Now, bear in mind that all the for this entire script, there's a plug and play available down below, and we'll get into that in just a second. But in today's module, what we are talking about is the one call close script. Now, as I've mentioned in the last module, when it comes to one call close script, you have to be on the ball, because if you're not, you only have the container of that one call, right? Whereas if you're doing two call close, that first call, you have a lot more leeway. And I've already explained to you who's the one call close and the two call close is right for. But if it turns out that the one call close is right for you, in today's module, I will show you how to execute it with grace and elegance. So on that note, let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, the one call close script. In today's teaching, we're going to go over things to bear in mind with the one call close script. Phase 1, digging. Phase 2, emotional buy-in, logic, culture fit, and then finally the close. So a little bit about the sales script. So as I said, before we get into this, there will actually be a plug and play right below this video where you have the entire script. But the thing about this script is you can't actually copy. As I said, one of the really awesome things about spending the eye-watering amount of money that I spent on this platform is we can, have functionality like that. Now, the reason I didn't make copy paste is because even if you just literally copy paste it, which I don't recommend you do, even if you just copy paste it, it ingrains it in your mind, right? When you retype it out or rewrite it out. And the thing is, for me, this is really just that extra push or that extra nudge that I want to give you to be like, yo, make this thing your own, right? Don't just copy paste it, because you're just gonna be like everyone else. And we've already talked about how that's one of the cardinal sins of sales. The second thing you need to understand is that 70% of their mind is already made up before they got on that call. All right. And if you want to sort of drill that home, once again, just watch the first module in this phase. Third, understand that this call is kind of like a date that flows well, right? If you try to force something or push something that isn't there, it's never going to turn out well. Whereas if both parties come into things open-minded and are willing to, sort of put some of their cards on the table, have a very honest and candid conversation with themselves, and then at the end, evaluate whether it makes sense to move forward or not, that's really when things start to feel effortless. So detach from the outcome, because as I said, we are not so much like salespeople, okay? We're really here to evaluate, to dissect, to dig, and then just to be very honest as to whether it makes sense to move forward or not. The last thing I need you to understand is that for your first 3 or 4 sales call, this is going to feel weird. Going through the script, maybe even saying some of the stuff is going to feel a little off to you, right? In the same way, you remember when, we were young and we were on that first date, and it's a scary thing. You don't know what to say, right? And then as you start to go on more and more dates, it's not something that you stress about all day and you're like, oh my God, I've got this date, I'm so nervous and this and that. It's just, it's something that almost becomes second nature to you. Now, let's get into the script. Before you get into this first phase, right? Obviously, when you get on Zoom, and this is one of the big reasons why I actually moved fully to remote sort of discovery calls in 2018. And I even told clients based in the UK, I'm not going to meet you in person. Based in London, I'm not going to meet you in person. Everything is going to be remote. And the reason that is because, when you have in-person meeting, you have all the niceties, the coffee, the this, the that, right? Whereas with Zoom, you can kind of just get a little bit more straight into it. That said, you do need to have a general chat for 2-3 minutes. Now, one of the big things that I want you guys to do to the best of your ability is to assume familiarity, right? So almost just break the ice instantly. And I'm going to get Tristan now to put in a clip of like a little sales breakdown or call breakdown I did with a client like this, where I got on the call and I didn't even say like, hey, how's your day or this, that. I literally went straight into like, and bear in mind, you know, Danny, my CMO, was already there. So there was a bit of a conversation started. So of course you're gonna have to be like, hey, but for example, you know, if you were me, you could have just come straight in, and this is actually a e-commerce brand in Italy, one of the biggest, well, actually they're the biggest sort of offline health distributor. You know, they have physical stores and kind of do primarily wholesale, and we were helping them move online. Anyways, long story short, even if Danny wasn't on the call, instead of even saying hi, I could have just been like, hey, real question before we get into this, you know, and you'll see me mention this on the call. I would talk about kombucha. I was like, so what's really the deal with kombucha? Like, is it what everyone's made it out to be, blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll go ahead and get Tristan to put in that clip now.
And he got Iman on it too, like, but on some weirder stuff.
What's this?
Josh, that we have like a client also on like the wellness kind of thing, and that he got us on psyllium husk and
slippery elm bark.
And slippery elm bark, yeah, that's the one. That's the king of them.
We're sharing our health regimes here.
Nice. What are you sipping on?
This is actually a little ginger. It's a company we represent. It's called Gimber. They're out of Belgium. So it's just a very strong, like concentrated ginger mix, and I put it in water. So like after you eat, it helps to, you know, boost the energy because we're all a little bit lethargic afterwards. So.
I was about to say, I want your opinion on this. What do you like? Because I got some of my friends who are in the like holistic health space, and they're like, I've seen like varying opinions on the effectiveness of kombucha. Because I always find that if I have a kombucha after I eat, like, I don't know, something about it, my stomach just feels more settled.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, you're talking to a California native, so like kombucha is like our thing. So yeah, I mean, that's exactly the feedback I would have. Anytime after I would eat, if I drink a kombucha, just immediately my energy like it picks back up. I don't feel that lethargic effects afterwards. You know, I'm now in Italy, so kombucha is hard to get. So espresso is the next best thing.
Has your caffeine consumption got up through the roofs?
Dramatically.
Dramatically. So. Yeah, it's one of those places. It's kind of similar thing in like 2 years ago. I was working with a few clients out in Holland, and like you can't go to. First of all, everything there is all in-person meetings. They don't understand that whole Zoom thing. And first of all, you have a coffee when you sit down. You have a mid-meeting coffee, which I never understood. And then it's almost like a celebratory end of meeting coffee.
Of course.
So the caffeine consumption out there is pretty nuts.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a cultural thing. So,
but anyways, we're fast tracking. It's a pleasure to meet you. Danny has told me some very good stuff. Obviously, I watched over the recording of yesterday's call, and you know, Danny kind of, is that Oura ring you're wearing?
Yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. Good to see.
I have my way here.
Yeah, I actually reached out to them to see if we could represent them here in Italy, but they're more direct to consumer relationship right now is what they're focusing on, but who knows, maybe in the future.
Hopefully we got that website conversion value. Maybe you saw one of our ads and we
I have seen a lot of ads for them on Facebook.
Okay. Hopefully we were the ones to get that conversion then. But yeah, so I'm just gonna run you through some questions. I apologize if I kind of repeat myself. There may be some questions that Danny's already asked you. There definitely are some, but as I said, I just have some follow-up questions myself. So yeah, we'll kind of get straight into it. I mean,
so you can see right there, that is an example of me assuming familiarity. Like I don't even ask or say like, hey, blah, blah, this and that. I just get straight into it. And a lot of times I will, you know, there's many examples of this. And you'll see this especially a lot in the CPA vault. Like I just get straight into it, and I almost just, I come in with a frame that of course they'd want to become a client, or of course we're going to get along. And, you know, I may not make the offer for that to be the case, or it may actually turn out that we're not the right fit, but like, I like to come in with that mentality. And I kind of like to, like, I don't know, you know, once again, I keep making these references to dating, but it's just so similar, sales, right? You know, when you're awkward and you say the things that you feel like you need to say, I think that's the big thing. In this first 2-3 minutes, don't say the things like you feel like you need to say. Oh, so what's the weather like where you're from? Or, oh, that's crazy, blah, blah. Like just, you know, try to be a little different, okay? So on that note, let's move into phase 1. So phase one is the digging phase. This is really where we're trying to get as much information about their business as possible. So let me give you a little bit of clarity on how these discovery calls usually go. First, I'm just going to ask you some questions so I can understand the nuances of your business. Then I'm going to give you a worst case scenario. I'm going to give you something that's realistic. And I'm also going to give you a reach target of kind of what it's like to work together. Then lastly, we'll see whether we're a good fit for each other. Does that sound all right with you, Sophia? So once again, you can change the wording. Do not be dogmatic and think that you have to say these exact words, and just kind of that general gist. Hey, this is how these calls normally go. I'm gonna, at the end of this call, if it makes sense to work together, I'll give you a rough idea of what's, worst case scenario, what's something that's probably realistic, and what's, some reach examples. And then at the end, we can have a discussion as to whether it makes sense to move forward. Does that sound all right with you? As I said, you're really just setting the frame and setting the tone, but also not in a way where you're trying to be like super macho, and it doesn't matter if you're a guy or girl, by the way, like just, super commanding, just because that's what salespeople do. No, it's just you're saying an outline so you understand what's to come. And also you are, taking charge here, but without being an asshole or super salesy. So next part of the script is really where you're going to point out the obvious, right? That the prospect is indeed super busy and yet decided to meet with you. So this must be because they have intent on working with you, or at least are open to the idea. Remember that if they're on the call with you, there's a medium to high level of interest. So you'll go something like this. Well, Sophia, you took the time out of your busy schedule to have this meeting with me. Why is that? And by the way, if you've done aggressive outreach in that instance, you can also just be like, Sophia, I know that, I was very, very keen and eager to get on this call with you. And I also know that you're very, very busy. So why do you actually agree to have this call? I'm curious. Right? Because here's the thing, if you say it the way that the script says it and you've literally hit up this prospect like 8 times, they're gonna be like, why are you, like, as I said, give prospects the respect they deserve. They're not idiots. They're not children, okay? So if you ask them, why are you having this call with me? And, they're like, because you fucking reached out to me 8 times. Like, what a stupid question, right? So you can even, and by the way, here's the thing. If this is like the first time you reached out and they agreed, right? Then then you can use this with no issues. Or if they came in from ads, or like if the interaction was very smooth. But if there's a lot of heavy lifting to get them on the call, obviously don't phrase it this way. In that case, be like, look, I know that I hounded you, but that's because I'm really, really excited about your brand. But I also know that you're super busy and you did agree to have this call with me. So why'd you want to jump on? When you say it like that, you're acknowledging the sort of, they understand you're self-aware about the situation, but it's still, it still acknowledges the fact that they are busy and they're taking the time out of their day to have a call. So that must be for a reason. So then moving on, you're going to ask, so what inspired you to start your business? Now it's funny, very, very few agencies actually ask this question. Most agencies want the main event without the foreplay. Sorry to be a little crass there, but seriously, like show them that you care. It's funny, like very few agencies actually ask like, why do you even start this whole thing? Most agencies just want to know the numbers and this and that. So it's a very, very important question. Yep. So next you're going to ask something like this. And by the way, even though the script says something, I'm even going to go off script now and rephrase it just to show you that there's 101 different ways to skin a cat. So I'm even not going to follow the own sales script that I'm giving you, as I said, just to prove that even in the moment sometimes, because I follow the script religiously these days, and I've kind of talked to you guys about that in previous modules about how things went wrong when I started veering off and I got a little too cocky and thought, I know this thing so intimately and this and that. And I thought that, hey, I know the script so well at this point that I don't need to bother. But even, these days, like, even if my script says something, if in that moment other words feel more natural to me, I'll roll with it, right? So for example, with this one, I might say what's on the screen. So for example, I might go, what sort of customers do you serve and at what price point? Or if I want to mix it up that day, I might go, so Sophia, I took a look at your website. I feel as though I have a pretty intimate understanding of, the customers that you serve and at what price point. But could you tell me a little bit more about that and just kind of elaborate a little bit more about what your perfect customer is, what sort of price point, kind of what products do they buy first? Do they then move on to another specific product after that? Just give me a little bit more context. I'd absolutely love that. You see, many, many ways to skin a cat. And when I told you this is the best agency sales training out there, it's because, as I said, this is coming from someone who's been doing this for 5 years, all the way from being a little shy, nervous 16-year-old trying to dress up in a button-up and fucking sign a $1,500 a month client in person back in 2016, all the way to signing clients that literally bring in $250,000 a year in billables and not even batting an eye. And as I said, doing a lot of stuff that I thought salespeople should do, and I realized this is fucking stupid. Like, this does not serve the way, this does not serve service-based sales. So as I said, I'm showing you on the fly, right? Because I said, for me, there's a big difference about like just giving you the script and this and showing you like how my mind, like I want you to go through the sales training and understand how my mind is working, because it doesn't matter what I say, it matters how I say it and the thinking behind it. So let's move on to the next part. Next, you're going to go something along the lines of, awesome. And I'm going to ask you some more specific questions now so I can understand where your business is currently at and where you want to get to in, for example, a 12-month timeline. That sound fine with you? Now you're about to start asking some questions that will make some business owners out there very uncomfortable if they're not used to this stuff. So that's why I like to get a little bit of compliance and really just kind of, I guess, give them a little bit of a forewarning that I'm going to ask them some more specific questions here. So first question you're going to ask is you're going to go, okay, so what's the current process of taking a stranger and turning them into a customer? Once again, this will just give you an idea of the main channels / traffic sources they use to drive the sales that their business is currently bringing in. Now, the next question you're going to ask is, how much revenue is the business doing per month? Now, this is pretty self-explanatory. Now, they might have a little bit of resistance to telling you, and if they do, compare yourself to a tax advisor, a service provider that will make them money, but needs transparency and metrics in order to do so. But I will say now in the year of 2021, 2022, 2023, et cetera, business owners are getting a lot more comfortable talking about these numbers. Next question you're going to ask is, how much revenue would you like to be making in 12 months, for example? And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, you can make that 6 months, 9 months. You could even make it 7 months to be, to really kind of shock their system and be like, oh, I've never fucking heard anyone ask me how much I want to be doing in 7 months or 9 months specifically. Okay. And really what you're doing here is you're future pacing and starting to assign a real number to where they could be in 12 months from now. This is very, very powerful. This also gives you context as to whether they're being naive or maybe being too pessimistic. And I've had clients tell me, hey, I want to be at this number by 12 months. And I tell them, honestly, I'm like, hey, look at my experience. And obviously, if you don't have a lot of experience, but even if you've had just 2 or 3 or 4 clients in that niche in the past, you can be awesome and tell them like, hey, look, of course, that's an incredible goal. It might be a little bit of a stretch, but of course, if this works out, we will do everything in our ability to try and make that happen. Or on the flip side, I've also had clients come to us and I tell them like, I'll be honest, I think you're being too pessimistic. Like, I think you could do better numbers than that. But once again, the key thing here is to be honest with them, right? Because you don't want to be like, oh, I think you're being too pessimistic. And then you don't even hit what their expectations are. Next thing you're going to ask is, have you ever done paid advertising before? Now, this is super important to know so you can get a feel for their past experience with paid advertising. Now, that's what my agency does. Okay. So obviously if you're offering a different service, slot that in instead, email marketing, SMS marketing, organic TikTok content, like whatever it is. Okay. Just slot that in. Next question you're going to ask is, have you ever worked with an agency before? Now you really want to watch out for this question because sometimes it can give you red flags. Now, if they've worked with an agency before and talk shit about them rather than just, some constructive feedback, then you can get a feel for whether they're going to be a nightmare client or not. I always watch out for this question. If they say, yes, we worked with them in the past, we no longer do it. I kind of dig into it. I'm like, oh, I'm just out of curiosity. Why? Right. And it's kind of just like people in real life, like for example, it doesn't matter how bad an ex relationship is. People who have a good heart and good morals and good ethics, like for example, if a relationship didn't work in the past, for whatever reason, I would never, even if it was horrendous, like terrible, right? And I've been very blessed that hasn't happened, and knock on wood, it doesn't happen. I've only had absolute angels in my life. But as I said, I've spoken to girls or even guys and they talk about their past relationship and it's not like, oh yeah, like I'll be honest, it didn't work for this and this reason. They're like, yeah, like they fucked me over, they blah, blah, to the point where, of course, if that's your close friend, they can speak to you like that. But if you only kind of somewhat know the person or just getting to know that person and they're so intensely talking about like, yeah, like that, fuck that person, blah, blah, this, that, it's some red flags, right? Like, I could have someone just provide the worst service on earth, absolutely fuck me over. And I'm not going to tell to a person unless they're my really, really close friend and someone I can, kind of confide in. I'm just going to be like, yeah, it didn't work out. I wish them the best. It didn't work out for this and this reason. But these things happen. And as I said, that's, you really want to watch out for this question, right? If they worked with an agency in the past and just kind of feel into the energy, like where's the energy coming from? So once you have finished up with phase 1, the digging phase, then you're going to move into the emotional buy-in phase. So here's what you're going to ask. You're actually going to tell the client like, hey, you're almost going to, obviously without them knowing this, you're almost kind of like forewarning them that, hey, we're going to we're kind of moving into a different part of the conversation now, right? So you're going to say something along the lines of this. And I said, you can mix it up and, change this to suit your own style. Let's shift gears real quick because Sophia, obviously you're a very, very successful business owner. So I guess my question to you is, why do you even want to go from, let's say, 50,000 a month to 100,000 a month in the next 12 months? Why don't you just kind of want to coast and take it easy? And don't say because I want to grow my business or make money, right? Because of course, that's obvious to me. What's the actual reason behind it? So sometimes here you'll get a real honest answer very quickly off the bat, but most of the time, they're going to give you something surface layer. So feel free, and I recommend that you ask, and once again, feel into the energy, okay? Don't really pest them and be like, oh, but why is that? Oh, and why is that? And why is it? And, when they've kind of, shown their cards. But you want to ask anywhere from 1 to 3 follow-up questions. I said, make sure it doesn't look like you're just really pestering them, okay? Make it, actually just be inquisitive and be like, okay, that's super awesome. And why is that? Blah, blah, et cetera, okay? So great questions to ask here is why? Or, oh, that's very interesting. How do you think you'd feel if that happened, right? And as I said, the key here is to not make it look like it's part of the sales process. You're just genuinely curious yourself. And ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the emotional buy-in phase. Before, my first couple of years of sales, I was so much more, I was way more intense about that phase. But as I said, I've realized business owners can actually close off a lot of times when it comes to service-based sales and when it comes to, actual business owners, right? When we're doing B2B, B2C, it's sort of a different story. You can do a lot more emotional buy-in stuff. But in B2B world, I've realized that it can be very, very off-putting. So that's really all we're going to do for that phase. Now we're going to move into the logic phase. Now here's the general gist of what you're going to say next. So as we've already established, you're trying to get from 50,000 a month to 100,000 a month. Now, I'm curious, Sophia, would you agree that marketing and getting more leads to your business is how you're actually going to make that happen? Now, really what we're doing here is the business owner has to deal with many different aspects of the business. So once again, we want to make it a no-brainer. The marketing is the best way to do it. We actually want them to just say it and admit it themselves. Now, here's what you're going to say next. And once again, feel free to rephrase it to whatever kind of feels most comfortable to you. But it's going to be along the lines of, great, that's awesome to hear. Once they actually say that, yeah, I agree. Bringing in leads and marketing, that's the way that I'm going to grow my business. So from there, they agree that marketing and stuff is the way they're going to grow their business. Now you're going to go, well, look, here are your options. You could run a billboard ad, 0 feedback or signs of ROI. Maybe you could run a TV ad. Once again, 0 signs of feedback or ROI. You can hand out flyers. Once again, really no KPIs to work off of here. You could do any of those, or you could use Facebook ads where you know exactly how much is spent, how many leads are brought from that, and ultimately how much money is made from it. So I'm sure you'd agree that that's a much better option for your business, right? So you're going to say something generally like that. Now, once again, you want to polarize other mediums of marketing. So if you are doing email marketing, or let's say you're doing, let's use email marketing as an example. You're actually going to go, well, look, Sophia, you could run ads for sure. And the issue is most people think that ads is this magical thing where you make money. And then you can go something like, well, obviously me being in the marketing world, I know what the back end of these campaigns look like. And most people don't realize that most businesses actually lose money by advertising on Facebook. So you're actually going to risk all this money and you don't know whether you're going to get it back or not. Whereas with email marketing, we're just going to take your existing list, right? And anything we make you is pure bottom line because these are just repeat customers or these are leads that you've already paid for. So I don't know, I guess to me, that seems like a no-brainer. Does that seem like a no-brainer to you? So as I said, that's the way I'd frame email marketing. Or once again, you can do, let's use TikTok organic content creation, right? You can be like, hey, yeah, of course you can pay for, 500,000 impressions on Facebook, but you're going to pay however much it is, a few thousand, maybe even over 5 figures. Point is, it depends on where you're advertising, but you could tell the client, you go, yeah, of course you can advertise on Facebook, and if you get 500,000 impressions, it'll cost you $7,000. As an example, as I said, I need to do the math in my head. Also depends country to country. Anyways, back on my point, you can go, yeah, of course you can get 500,000 impressions and spend $7,000 on Facebook, or on TikTok, you can get 1 million, 1.5 million views on a single video, and we're gonna be doing. And for our clients, we actually do 8 to 10 of these hero pieces of content a month, right? So even if a couple don't hit, if one takes off the way that we've done for our other clients, as I said, why pay Facebook all this money when you can actually grow your own platform? So as I said, ladies and gentlemen, that's an example of how you can actually use logic to kind of basically just kind of shit on all the other mediums of marketing. Whether it's true, it doesn't matter. Of course, you don't want to lie or anything, right? But the thing is, everyone has their opinion on what the best medium is, right? And there is truth that for some niches, one medium makes sense more than the other, but in general, it's very open-ended, right? So here, the biggest thing in this part of the logic phase is really just, making it a no-brainer, and really, it's all about framing here. So in the next part, you're gonna go, so let me explain what we actually do for our clients. And you're gonna go ahead and fill that in, because this is something I can't script for you. You need to fill it in yourself and rehearse it hundreds of times in your head so the execution is clean. Here, you're gonna explain the results you get for your clients, and from a high level, how you actually get those results. Now, the next thing you're gonna move on to is, after everything you've told me, let me tell you what the worst case scenario looks like. Now, after the digging phase, you should have pretty much all the information you need to know about their business, and kind of referring back to previous modules, use your pen and paper, okay? So as I said, you should have an idea for what the worst case scenario looks like. You're not trying to impress them, okay? You're just trying to be honest here. Hey, here's what I think the worst case looks like. Then you're gonna go on and you're gonna say, now that we've covered what the worst case scenario looks like, let me show you what a good scenario looks like, and here's what we've actually accomplished for our clients. Now you show them a scenario that's slightly above what you think is possible. Now you can slot in a client case study to back it up, right? For example, you can have a little case study, a little slide presentation that you've made, and actually share your screen and give an example. Or if you don't have this, cut that out and just simply explain with logic how you arrive to that conclusion of what a realistic scenario or a good scenario looks like for them. Now the next phase is culture fit. So you're gonna say something along the lines of this. Now let's change tune real quick, because on the results front, as I've just explained to you, I think it's a green light. I have a high level of certainty, then we can knock it out the park for you. But real quick, let's talk about culture fit. So as I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is where you change the pace of the conversation again, and you actually get them to qualify themselves, but as I said, in a way where they're not like, this is just some fucking bullshit sales tactic. Like, there's actually a reasoning behind it. So you're gonna go on and you're gonna say, let me tell you a little bit about how we operate at my agency and what's important to our ethos. And then you're gonna list 2 to 4 things. Now, you'll actually see this in the vault when I run through some closing examples, but I actually list off a few things that are important to our agency and how we operate specifically. Now, this is really your chance to tell potential clients what makes your agency tick and what makes you special. And then you're gonna go on and you're gonna say, my question to you, after everything I've showed you, why do you think you'd be a good fit for our agency culture? Now, this is where you get the client to qualify, as I said, without sounding like an asshole. Because the thing is, if you're like, oh, why should we accept to work with you? And it just, like I said, just give them a little bit more credit. But if you tell them, hey, this is what's really important to us. Like, this is, to me, what's important in this relationship. And this is really what's important when we work with clients. After everything I've just showed you, and by the way, you can say, I don't think we're going to be a good fit. But if you do think so, why do you think you'd be a good fit for the way that we operate at the agency? Next, you are going to move into phase 5, the close. Now, hopefully they should say something positive, right? And they should say, oh, for this and this and this reason. So you then move on and you go, that's great to hear. I also think we'd be a great culture fit too. So I'm curious, would you like our help to scale to 100,000 per month? Imagining that Sophia is currently at 50,000 and wants to get to 100,000. It said, now you're really getting compliance from them for you to actually pitch your service, but you're also future pacing the desired result they've already told you. Great. So here's how our pricing works. Now here's actually where you're going to state your pricing and what your offer is, and you're going to use everything that you've learned in the pricing modules. Now, as I said, this is where you take all the knowledge you receive from the pricing modules and you decide on how much to charge them. And this is why I love pen and paper and why I think it's so important while you're on the calls, because you can make notes of how much to charge. So, for me, there's no correct answer, okay? Only you will know. Now at this stage, either the client is gonna say, great, let's do it, in which case, just skip to the next point, or they may have some logistical questions or some objections. In that case, use the objection handling plug and play, and that's gonna be covered in some of the following modules. Now, either you've gone through all of that and they've gone, great, that's awesome, let's get started, or they have some objections or logistical questions, and once you've kind of worked through those, then you're gonna go on and you're gonna get payment. So you're gonna go something along the lines of, great, so next step is to sell the invoice so we can get started running your ads and get your business making money ASAP. So real quick, if you could just drop in the chat your business name, registered address, and also your VAT number if applicable. Right? As I said, obviously, depending on who you're speaking to, where you are in the world, you may need some different details. But as I said, once you've gotten the green light from the client and they want to move forward, you secure payment immediately. I cannot stress this enough. If you leave that meeting, whether it's physical or remote, and they haven't paid the invoice, your chance of signing them has gone down by 70 to 90%. I said, I have learned in the, over many years, I've become a lot less intense about them absolutely having to pay the invoice on the call. I just get a feeler for things, but I also understand that a lot can go wrong if they leave that call and they haven't paid. Instead, when you're speaking to larger companies, sometimes they actually have a finance department that it gets sent to, and then the accountant or their in-house accountant or bookkeeper, they pay it. Okay, so it is true that these things happen as well. Now, when it comes to actually paying the invoice, some people actually like to take their client's card details and then bill them. I don't like to do this. Instead, I'd rather just send them the invoice and then they can pay with card there on the spot. Okay, so I actually send them the invoice and then I tell them to check their email and they should have an agency flow invoice, and then I just stay with them as they pay on the phone. Okay, so they pay the invoice immediately, and then as I said, they type in their own card details. Now, sometimes on Stripe, you'll get a do not honor notice, and basically what do not honor means. So basically, if a payment fails, if you go online on Stripe, it'll tell you the reason. And insufficient funds obviously means they don't have enough money. But do not honor, which happens 90% of the time, if there is a decline or if it doesn't go through, that basically means their bank declined the payment. Okay, so you can tell them to call their bank and just mute themselves. So I've actually stayed on the phone. It's very funny. I've stayed on the phone with clients for like 30 minutes, muted myself literally as they're on the phone to their bank, like unblocking things and then taking payment. For me, as I said, unless it feels really weird and unless it's like, once again, feel into things, right? If it feels really weird and unnatural for you to stay on the call, or for me, like if I know for a fact they're gonna pay, like and this is intuition and gut instinct that you'll just get over the years. Then I just tell them, hey, I actually have another meeting to get to, get that squared away, especially because then what I'll do is I'll book in the onboarding call straight away. I'll send them the onboarding link, which you guys would have gone in phase 3 or that onboarding process. And then they can just book in straight away. And it's very, very easy because in that way, I know that there's a call in the calendar and, everything is just heading in the direction. I also create their agency flow channel. If they can't take payment, then I'll just create their agency flow channel as well. Really just more things to make them feel like, okay, this is locked in, their client. Next thing is onboard and end. So as I said, once payment is made, you can take a sigh of relief. They're now officially a client. So send them the onboarding link and explain that in the space of 60 to 90 minutes, they'll be entirely onboarded. Then just wait for a notification that they booked in their strategy call and you're done. So ladies and gentlemen, the action step for today is I want you to block out 2 to 3 hours tomorrow in your calendar. I want you to go through and rewrite the script, add your own flair to it, and tailor it to your own voice. So that is the one call close script. And as I said, ladies and gentlemen, you need to be very dialed in when it comes to this, okay? The 2 call close, it allows for a little bit more flexibility because you have more face-to-face time with them. And especially that first call is so sort of chill and laid back. But when it comes to 1 call close script, you definitely need to be on the ball and on point with it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this module. As I said, make sure you follow that action step, block out 2 to 3 hours, literally put it in your Google Calendar between these times. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to rewrite the script and add my own flair and own voice to it. And apart from that, I hope you have enjoyed and I look forward to seeing you in the next module.